It's a general South African perception that fraud and corruption have reached crisis proportions, but experts say South Africa is not worse off than any other country in the world, and that it's not just a South African problem or an African problem, it's an international one. Public perception may be heavily influenced by what gets reported in the media. Fraud and corruption is associated with government and the public sector more than the private sector, because the private sector is not inclined to disclose everything. However, experts agree there's still a long road ahead in the fight against fraud and corruption. Now, to learn more, I'm joined by Bogale Molefe. He's a board member at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Thanks very much for joining us, Bogale. Now, just briefly, what qualifications do you need to be a fraud examiner, and what exactly does your organization do?
The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is a professional body for the forensic industry worldwide. The mother body is US-based. We have about 80,000 members cutting across about 150 countries. Now, coming back to your question, the qualifications, obviously fraud gets committed, in various sectors of any company. So the fraud examiners that we have would be qualified in legal, IT, finance, and any other disciplines that really help one to investigate the fraud and corruption.
And in terms of what your organization actually does?
What we basically do is we provide training, like the conference that we're having. We have experts from about 20 countries that will be sharing trends, or trades rather, in terms of how to investigate fraud, how to identify fraud, what are the latest scams that are being perpetrated by fraudsters out there. Besides the training that we provide, we're also responsible for regulating the industry. So that will be through ethics and professional standards, in terms of what is it that the forensic investigators can or cannot do when they conduct their mandate of either conduct investigations or doing other proactive initiatives that are aimed at preventing fraud.
Now, thank you for that background, but it seems as though South Africa is often slipping when it comes to corruption indices. How do we compare relative to developed and developing countries?
It is not quite correct that South Africa is slipping. If you recall, the 2013 Corruption Perception Index says that we position 72, I think, out of 177 countries. So we're much better than other countries. The reality is that we have challenges of our own in South Africa, and those should not be looked at, in comparison to other countries, particularly in terms of numbers or rankings. We have our own challenges, and I think as the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, we're trying to do our fair share to make sure that we empower the forensic investigators that we have in this country. Not only in this country, by the way, the South African chapter is also focusing on Africa. We want to sort of grow our footprint in Africa as well. So we want to make sure that the people that we rely on in Africa to fight fraud and corruption are well equipped to do that.
Okay, all right, I agree with you. Let's not compare, and let's rather focus on South Africa.
Definitely.
Why is it that year in, year out, we continue to hear about wasteful expenditure, even unlawful expenditure at the municipal government level? What is it that South Africa is not doing right? Because it keeps on happening year in, year out. On the one hand, it seems as though those monies cannot actually be got back, and you rarely hear about public servants being prosecuted for all this money that goes missing.
Yes. Look, I believe that the perpetrators are being prosecuted, perhaps not the large number that we would want to see. The recovery remains a challenge. I think the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners has released a report, the 2014 report to the nation, and it says that half of the organizations, fail to recover the losses that they suffer due to fraud and corruption. And there's a number of things really that contribute to an organization struggling to recover. I think in South Africa, with associations like the ACFE and other players, whether they're in private sector or government, we're trying to do the best that we can to nip the corruption as it is. It is widely reported that is correct. So what is being reported on the media is a correct reflection of what is happening out there. Perhaps we're not too aware as the public as to what happens to these cases at the end. How many people really get prosecuted? Do people really get prosecuted? What kind of sentences are being meted out by the courts? And are these sentences really sending the right message to make sure that they contribute to preventing this fraud going forward?
We often bash government for corruption, but to what extent is the private sector corrupt?
Corruption is a problem for both government and private sector, and in most cases you will find that it involves both parties from either side. So it is never a problem for government. The members that we have at the conference, the 7th conference that we're hosting for these 3 days, we've got about 860 members there. I can tell you most of them are from the private sector and not the government. So it is not really a government problem.
All right, thank you very much for your insight there. That was Bogale Molefe. He's a board member at the ACFE.